you win this fight on June 1st and retire? Is that possible?
The answer was, I don't know. I got to see how I feel. I got to go out there. I got to fight this guy and just see how I feel. But everyone could be my last one. I've been saying that.
Right now, you've got Dustin Poirier, who has lost to Justin Gaethje with a brutal head kick, come back and beat number 11 in the lightweight division, old Benny St. Denis. Mm-hmm. And now here we are. Sarukian didn't want to take the tight turnaround, and we've got Poirier versus Islam in the main event of 302. I feel bad for Sarukian, actually, when you think about it, because there's lots of things that could happen off the back of 302. Yes, Sarukian could be the next contender if Islam does what he's supposed to do, which is beat Poirier. But in the shock turn of events that Poirier, could come out of this with a win, does this kind of fuck up the lightweight division quite badly? Because you could argue that if he does win, you've got McGregor the next month. If McGregor can squeeze past Chandler, can you see a reality? Can you see a line here where McGregor squeezes his way into the title picture, having not got a fucking win for how many years?
How Mexican will that Mexican Independence Day be at the Sphere? Mm-hmm. Because we've got
Las Vegas already, not in Mexico.
So we've got rumors. We've got Sean O'Malley versus Merab on that card. But what if we have the quadrilogy or the tetralogy of McGregor versus Poirier, which you could see happening? But really, do we believe Poirier has a chance? As bad as that sounds, because of his track record.
No. I don't know. I mean, if you were to compare this with Strickland's Izzy, yeah, a lot crazier things can happen, and this would not be nearly as big of an upset as Strickland beating Izzy. It just wouldn't be. I mean, it just feels like there is this potential to set up what you're describing there with a Conor quadrilogy. Man, I am super not interested in that either. You know what I mean? It's just so funny because, we were talking a couple months ago about, this kind of sweepstakes where it would all lead, but we've somehow ended up with what was probably the least likely to get a title shot. But the more you start to describe some of those potential matchups that it sets up, then it feels a bit familiar, a bit like there's a bit of you start to look at it retrospectively. Was there some intentional matchmaking here? Let's book them a little bit early. The guys who deserve won't be ready because they did, in fairness, ask Sarukian backstage, and he was like, "No, dude, I'm not going to be ready in 2 months. I just got done fighting." No. And so here's Poirier being slotted in, and I don't know. I mean, Poirier's a star. I think it's probably the best case scenario for the UFC in terms of dollars. In terms of interesting matchups, I think Sarukian is the most interesting matchup. In terms of retirement, though, yeah, it's like, is there a possibility he retires win or lose?
No, if you get the belt, I don't think you can retire straight away.
It would be a disaster if he did.
Yeah, you'd have to be a very strong person just to walk away instantly when there's the potential of all those pay-per-view buys, all the pay-per-view points you can earn. You could have a fight with Conor next, which in your eyes would probably be quite an easy matchup considering you've just beat him twice on the bounce and broke his leg.
Yeah.
So, and think of all the money you could earn from that. You'd actually be on the A side for once. I think Poirier's maybe realistic in the fact that this is probably his last title fight because of his age. He might not be thinking that way, though. That's just me surmising.
He literally said that. Yeah. I watched that interview just before this to kind of freshen up on it. And yeah, he literally said, "Mom, spaghetti, this is my one shot." So he went with the meme. He literally thinks this is his last title opportunity.
How much stock do you think McGregor has in Poirier winning as well? Because, going back to that narrative, if Poirier can get a win, that is McGregor's road in, isn't it? Like, even though he's lost twice to Poirier now, that is a road in, otherwise he would not have.
McGregor has a good angle on this no matter which way it goes because it's Islam Habib's, brother, essentially. They're not blood brothers, but they grew up together. They're on the mats. They're best friends. He was there in the cage when that brawl went down at 229.
Yeah.
Islam has been there all along, and it's just as personal, I think, going after somebody like Islam. This is crazy to say this. The more we're talking about this, I'm not as excited about those two for a title fight, no matter who wins between Chandler and McGregor. But I'm more interested in that fight than I am Islam versus Poirier, because it feels like with the McGregor-Chandler fight, there's so many unknown variables. What the fuck does McGregor look like now? Is he still prime and ready to go? And the same could be said for Chandler. Chandler's 37 now. So what do those two look like? Their styles, how do they clash? It's been compared with, the Mendez fight. There's so many things there. Whereas, and I realize this, I should not be this callous towards the fight game with everything we've seen in the last couple of years. But it feels like with Islam and Poirier, we pretty much know how this fight's going to go. We feel like there's going to be some exchange on the feet. There might even be a bit of success by Poirier, but at some point he's going to get taken down. He's going to struggle to get back up. And if he doesn't get submitted, it'll do that for 5 rounds. That's what we feel like is going to happen.
I definitely struggle to see how it's going to be any different from the Habib fight, to be honest with you. I feel like it's going to be fairly similar to that. Whereas, like you said with the unknowns with McGregor and Chandler, it is super fascinating because I think one of the main things that a lot of people forget is that McGregor was KO'd as well, like in that second fight that they had.
Yeah.
But like you do wonder after getting KO'd as well, how much that affects the chin as well.
And just to interject as well, I think that's worthy of thinking about with Islam as well. He's been knocked out in the past.
That's a good point.
So there is, I think, at least something worth considering there. If a big shot does land from Poirier, will he have the ability to eat it like Habib did in the fight with Poirier?
The struggle when fighting those types of fights as well is not when you hurt them. It's like, okay, now when's the shot coming? When's defensive wrestling coming? I can't rush and swarm someone like maybe a Chandler would do to McGregor if either one were to hurt each other, because you can't rush in, because if they get me to the ground, they may be hurt, but they probably have done that all of their life where they can still be fully aware and control you, where you might not get back up for the rest of the round.
Yeah.
Or you could potentially lose after just being that close to finishing. So it's so difficult to actually put a finishing sequence together on like the Sambo guys because of their style.
And I think honestly that's why Oliveira was so successful in that nature as well, because he was getting dropped left, right, and centre, but everyone was so goddamn afraid of following him to the ground that they just basically gave him a 10 count to go. Right.
Well, that was the thing. He would drop to his guard, wouldn't he? He would never go down into turtle or anything. He'd always fall back onto his guard, even if he felt a little bit rocked or a little bit stunned by something. And people were like, "Oh no, I've heard about the guard. I'm not doing that." And then Islam, who's not afraid, boom, straight in there, gets an arm triangle and mount, and then just finishes.
That says it all, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's just it doesn't matter. You're hurt. You're not going to be able to concentrate the same way someone who is who's moving forward, who's being aggressive, because they'll be steps ahead of you. I don't think McGregor can come straight back in. I think we need to see McGregor in fun fights that don't necessarily have it doesn't have title implications if there's no history there.
But because, I mean, you're kidding yourself if you think that he's not going to go after that final title glory as well. If he's got 2 fights left, he's going to beat Chandler, going to fight for a title, going to win that, and then I'm going to retire, and then I'm probably going to fight in bare knuckle or something.
I feel like McGregor needs to fight the person he can have the most success against. So I don't think he would want to fight Makhachev personally.
I disagree, because I mean, it's like, why does nobody ever retire in this sport? Because the kind of things that you get inside of that cage, you can't pay money for. And so many people thought McGregor was going to leave after particularly the Mayweather fight, that he was just done because he has so much money. All the quotes about, silk sheets, you don't want to get up and train, all of that. But in reality, it's like, I think when you've had all the cash, you can't possibly have any more. What the hell is there even to do? Well, you need a challenge. People become tremendously unhappy in their lives when they have nothing to do. And I think it's one of those things where McGregor needs a mountain to climb still. He needs something to chase. And I think in his case, that's something, that title is... I mean, when the new belts came out, he immediately, I remember on the Mac Life, there was a video of him posing with it saying, I need one of these.
Well, it's difficult, isn't it? I think it takes an incredibly mature person to look at what you've achieved in the sport, the 2 belts on top of the cage at Madison Square Garden, say, no, that is enough. And that's kind of what it is. That's, just this idea of recapturing that nostalgic feeling of success. And I think there's very few people in the sport that can look back and go, no, do you know what? That was enough for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think maybe there's a potential of McGregor's, ego kind of outgrowing himself and outgrowing what he was capable of achieving in the time that he did, because he transcended the sport, had the boxing fight, set up a generational wealth company with his whiskey, and literally could do anything anyone would need or dream, or he succeeded beyond belief. And now he's like, but what got me there is the fighting and my love for fighting. But it's like, now I'm like this commodity where I can't just step into any bout. I have to be strictly scheduled because I pull in so much money. I can't just fight whenever.
You're totally right.
So it's like he's just seeking for these like thrills anywhere he can.
He had no, he had no responsibility. There was nothing clinging to his sides. There was nothing dragging him down. There was nothing for him to think about other than winning that belt and becoming the world champion. Whereas now, his wins and losses are actually dictating probably the stock of his businesses as well. If you see a McGregor loss, are there a portion of people that don't want to buy the whiskey? Is there a portion of people that don't want to go to his pub and buy a stout? Like he is in himself now dictated by the wins and losses to a certain extent.
Yeah, I mean, famously Ronda Rousey had I can't remember what movie she was
Roadhouse.
Yeah. Oh, it was Roadhouse.
Yeah,
Jesus
Roadhouse.
Christ.
Yeah.
We come full circle. Yeah, she was supposed to be in that and got booted out of the whole thing after she lost, Who knows? There's been all kinds of stuff coming out with her and her being really hard to work with. I think, you were talking about being ego-driven. I think this is just an ego-driven sport straight up, though. There's so much hard work involved, so much perseverance that I think by the end of it, you feel like you can take on the world. And you feel like you can absolutely run it back. You feel like on a better night, if you just come in more prepared, you just put the work in, you can do it. And I think that's a huge mentality for these guys. Randy Couture, it took him a couple times to actually retire. He retired after what was the third Chuck fight and came back. So even for him, it's not necessarily true. But when he said he was going to retire against Lyoto, he actually, to his credit, stuck to that. Dan Henderson is one that comes to mind. Retired after a title fight and almost won it. If there's any time where you would think a fighter would come back, it's maybe after you almost knocked out one of your arch nemesis again.
So close.
Well,
For a
it's,
title.
So close.
Yeah, for example, like DC as well. Like DC fought in an empty Apex versus Stipe just because it was the trilogy and they had 1-1 on each other. So it's like he said, "Yeah, I'm only interested in fighting titles, and if that's not the case, then I'm probably done." But
But he was supposed to retire at 40. I think he ended up retiring at like 42. It just kept extending, kept going. So
he said that after the Derek Lewis fight, he should have retired, right?
Yeah,
and that would have been a fantastic point to go out on. For another point that we haven't touched on, but Poirier, leading up to the Benoit fight, had very similar feelings to Volk did when he lost that fight to Islam. He come out and said, it was doing my head in not fighting all this time. He was having. I saw him on I think it was Theo Von. And he was having some real trouble out of camp, not being active. He said he was leaving to stay at hotels because he was driving his wife nuts and he was just being this irritable. Wow. He said he went through some real bad times where he felt like he didn't know who he was and he was really struggling and he needed a fight. So obviously we had questions whether he was doing a favor for the UFC or maybe being punished fighting this low rank guy. But I feel like he just needed to fight someone to feel normal. And obviously we always talk about how there's so much identity in being that guy, and it does make you worry about if he doesn't ever achieve this goal of getting the belt.
$2.99 is fairly decent for a whole month, isn't it? For
8 podcasts a month.
That's pretty good. Yeah,
bargain.
Unfiltered, uncensored, unadulterated takes from this guy over here. Look at that. Look at this guy.
Oh, that guy.
Well, all of you guys.
What's the last thing you bought for $2.99 that was worth the value?
I actually don't remember. If you're saying to me, when's the last time you spent £3 or less on a single item, I probably couldn't tell you. When's the last time you bought something that was £3 or less, Zach? Never. He's never done it.
He's never. Big expensive guy, Zach.
Yeah.